Good evening to you, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, here with your Hurricane Pro and HD video discussion for the 9th day of June 2014. Not a lot going on the Atlantic, as we would expect this time of year. The East Pacific, though, staying quite active, already up to the third tropical depression of the season there. Tropical Depression number 3E, E for Eastern Pacific, formed just recently. Maximum sustained winds 35 miles per hour. Pressure down to 1,006 millibars now. And the good news here is it's moving west at 4 knots. So the west part is the best aspect of that news, that it's moving away from Mexico. Here's what it looks like on a wide perspective. It gives you an idea of where TD number 3E is located in relation to everything else. Here is Mexico, the Baja Peninsula. It's not too far off the coast of Zihuatanejo, a very popular resort area, but it is moving west away from land, and that's good news. This is very stable air up to the northwest of the system. It's going to have a couple of days in which to strengthen. If we go back to the National Hurricane Center site, we can see the track map here. I don't like their Google track map. I like this old school map. When using the web, of course, you have fantastic tracking graphics with Hurricane Pro and HD, but these old school Hurricane Center graphics suit me just fine on the web. And you see here the forecast taking TD number 3E eventually will become a tropical storm and then probably a hurricane before reaching some of this more stable air and cooler water towards the end of the 5-day forecast period. Here's a close-up satellite animation. And you notice a couple of things, a very strong band trying to feed that moisture and energy into the system. If we take a look at the sea surface temperatures for the area, the anomalies, departures from normal, the depression's located right in here, and you notice that is about 1 degree to 1.5 degrees Celsius above the long-term average, and the entire eastern Pacific warming up compared to the long-term average. It's part of that El Nino pattern that we're starting to set up. Although there do seem to be a few chinks in the armor here, very small ones, and I don't want to make too much of it, but we're seeing some of these colder anomalies starting to show up, and that's how it happens. You never know. I've talked about this often, that I don't think this El Nino is going to be as big a deal as some were leading us to believe, based primarily on what they saw happening and then these incredible computer model forecast which suggested a super El Nino. I think we're going to see this begin to weaken or at least level out by the time we get to August and September. While we're speaking of anomalies, notice that the Atlantic Basin generally colder than average in a lot of the area. Right off Africa, though, a little bit warmer than it should be. The Gulf has been back and forth with this area was much below normal. Now it's above normal. You know, it doesn't really matter until we get something to develop. And then it's a matter of how much heat content there is in the ocean. We know that most of the Atlantic Basin, as is the Eastern Pacific, will have water temperatures at or above 80 degrees, and that's what you need to support tropical activity. So here's the system feeding off of that very warm water, very well organized band of convection rotating into the system. The close proximity to Mexico, though, and these high mountains, some of that inflow here close to the coast, the air coming in at the lower several thousand feet of the atmosphere, inflow, will be drier coming down off the mountains. That's downsloping, so it's likely to warm and compress and be a little bit drier. And look, you see that little bit of a dry slot right there. Let me draw over it with yellow. It'll show up a little bit better. And then I'll take the telestration away. So the proximity to the land not allowing it to organize very rapidly. Don't be surprised, though, as this pulls away, and if it can clear the Mexican coastline enough and get out over the open water, it may really intensify quickly. And I base that on A, the fact that intensity forecasting is where the least amount of skill lies, and B, Hurricane Amanda, a very strong hurricane a couple of weeks ago, did just that. It was forecast to be a low-end hurricane, and it ended up being almost a Category 5. So real quick, a look at the computer models, and you can tell, again, generally speaking, the guidance envelope suggesting a track away from the Mexican coastline. Only the L-Bar still sitting out there, one of these older models, trying to bring it up into the southern part of the Gulf of California. This is an outlier, so we discount this. The major models, the consensus models, the dynamic models, the three-dimensional powerhouse supercomputer-based global models, and then the models that are based off of them, the regional hurricane models, etc., generally agree here. This is not a bad forecast envelope, the total package here showing where this will end up over the next several days. So the good news there, for folks wanting to go down to the Mexican coastline, no real issues from this depression, and then it'll eventually become a tropical storm and probably a hurricane, but you won't have to worry about it. Maybe it'll bring some waves to the coast, and that could be a hazard if you don't know how to handle that. But as it pulls away, it'll take the clouds and nastiness with it, and if you have plans to go to Zihuatanejo or surrounding areas, don't even worry about it. It'll be fine. So just check the app, and you'll know what's going on, right? Well, there you go. That's a quick look at what's happening with our system in the Eastern Pacific for this evening. I am Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com, my website, and of course Hurricane Pro in HD. I'll put out another video on those apps for you tomorrow.